when you're designing your services, how do you know if they're valuable? What you want to be trying to do in that initial meeting is to figure out whether your sweet spot are well matched with their need. How have you designed the client experience? Are you matched in your values? Does this work feel meaningful to both parties? Our last conversation, we really talked a lot about making the concepts we've discussed so far into something a little bit more tangible, making them real, making them applicable and bringing them to life. So what I wanted to invite us to talk about this time, at least to start our conversation anyway, is the question around how do we value services? How do we value them in such a way that we are rewarded appropriately? How do we set our fee structures? How do we know that the fees and the fees that we are asking for are actually being experienced as value by our clients and our prospects and our customers, if you will? The quote that I'm inviting us to start with is Albert Einstein's quote. It's also in the email, saying, "Strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value." So how do we value services? How do we know if we're being valuable? How do we know that it has been a great investment for our clients and our customers, if you will? So what I want to invite is a simple conversation around the concept that value is a mutual experience. It's not a singular thing. It's not one way. So a lot of us in services, we tend to believe that the things that we are doing are adding value, the things that we are doing are creating value, and what we are doing is valuable. The thing I want to offer is that we actually don't have control over that. We can try to be valuable. We can do things that we believe are valuable to others, but they only actually become valuable when the receiving party values it, truly values it. So there have been countless times, I'm sure, in your lifetime when you have been engaged in an experience, a services-based experience, where somebody is doing something in an effort to add value or create value for you, and you don't care. It's not important to you. It doesn't matter. The example I like to use for this is when we look at large firms, typically consulting firms, accounting firms, law firms. They will often, many of the larger ones will often create a very luxurious lobby. Now, the thing about that is they are trying to create a welcoming environment. They're trying to create something that is valuable for their clients when they arrive. But not everybody values a very opulent or luxurious lobby setting. And in some cases, some people may be turned off by that. Those might be the type of clients that go to the local or smaller firms that don't necessarily make those same investments because it's valued differently. So when you're thinking about your own services, I've given you a very tangible example in this case. I want you to be thinking about when you're designing your services, how do you know if they're valuable? And especially as a mutually, like I like to say, a mutually rewarding value exchange. Because if it's valuable to your clients and customers, but it's not valuable to you, then you are not being rewarded in a way that inspires you either. And that's not necessarily sustainable because now you are doing work that doesn't light you up. And that's not valuable. So what happens is you end up doing lesser than. You end up doing work that isn't as exciting, and so you probably are going to put a little less into it. So what does it mean? So when we think about a mutually valuable, mutually valuable exchange, right, that is rewarding for both parties, I invite you to consider 4 different themes, 4 different questions, 4 different areas. The first area is around the job itself. What are you being hired to do? What is the skill set required, and what is it that they want you to do for them? When you go into that first area, I'll come back to that in a second. So that's the first area. The second area then becomes around the delivery of the experience. So is there, can they trust you to deliver? Is your delivery reliable? Whatnot. The third area that they look at is the feeling of the experience. And the fourth area is the bigger impact or purpose. So we've got the first area is the job itself. The second one is the delivery or the process, the approach. The third area is the feeling, and the fourth area is the bigger scope or impact, if you will. So let's take those apart one at a time. So the first area being the job itself. So here's something to consider. When you are being invited by a prospect to work together and they are exploring that work with you, right? What you want to be trying to do in that initial meeting is to figure out whether your sweet spot, the place that you can deliver the greatest value, and the way that you do that are well matched with their need. So sometimes we fall victim to this idea that when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And it's very easy to say, yes, my hammer, if you will, can do this job for you, when actually a screwdriver might be better. So what you want to do is really ask if the tools that you have in your skill set, your experience, your training, your natural talents, your sweet spot, is your cocktail of expertise, if you will, well matched to what the job needs. So that's the first area. And when that's how it's valued, when there's a great alignment there, then it's much smoother and more likely to be higher value naturally because there's a natural fit. The second area we want to be thinking about is the delivery. So what does the exchange look like as you are going through the process? How have you designed the client experience so that for you have set yourself up for success so that you know the steps that need to happen, whether it be from the initial onboarding right through to when the project winds up? What are the different steps in place that you have set up so that you can be successful in your work? That's the first thing to think about. And then flip that to the other side and make sure that your client or your prospect feel like that approach is well aligned with the journey they want to go on. Do they like how that sounds? Do they like that it can be reliable in that way? Is it predictable? Is it reliable? Is it something that they can trust that you are going to deliver on because you've got a process or a system or a methodology that is going to support not only that you're doing the job that they're hiring you to do, but also that they are going to like the experience of getting there. That's the second area. So valuing services, again, that's part of the value proposition. The third area is the feeling. So the feeling is when you start getting into areas like matching values. So are your values aligned? Are you philosophically similar? Do you have a similar mindset around this journey and what a solution might look like? Are you matched in your values? Are you matched? Does it feel like this is going to be easy, or does it feel like you've got some areas of conflict or confrontation because you're dissimilar so much so that it could get in the way or could create barriers or obstacles to moving forward? So ideally, if it's a fun engagement, and you all know this because we've all had clients that are not a great match. And when the phone rings, we're like, oh, all right, here we go. And we struggle because we know that the conversation is going to be labored, right? If it is feeling labored, the value that your client experiences is reduced, as is yours. Because you feel drained. It doesn't feel as fun. It's not inspirational. It's not joyful. It's not a nice feeling. That's the third area. Then the fourth area is really around purpose, bigger impact, contribution to the greater good. So in other words, does this work feel meaningful to both parties? Now, this is a really interesting one because for your clients, sometimes they're coming to you with something that they need to get done that is necessary, depending on your industry, something that is necessary that they've got to have happen. And the meaning that they attribute to that is simply around something that is, it's got to happen. I just want to clear this off my desk. I want to get this off my plate so that I can move on to more meaningful work. So for them, the meaning is around ease and just peace of mind, getting this done, completed. For others, depending on your industry, the meaning will have much bigger impact on their life experience, on their personal experiences, on them individually. And so the meaning that they attribute to the work is theirs uniquely. And when you attribute meaning to your work, the way you do the work and the way you create value and outcomes, when you can attribute your own meaning to that, that is elevating meaning for them, then the bigger purpose becomes much more inspirational. It feels bigger than the micro problem that you're currently engaged in solving. It feels grander. It feels like it's going to have impact in communities and beyond. For whatever reason, you will attribute meaning to it in some way that contributes to the greater good. So your attribution of meaning will elevate your client's attribution of meaning as well. They will be inspired by your sense of purpose and meaning as they are themselves getting their own sense of purpose or meaning addressed, whatever that is. When you have alignment there and you both understand what is meaningful about the work, you are much more likely to have a higher value exchange between you. So these are some ways to value services and to really think about how people experience value in their work with you and how you experience value in your work with them. So what I invite you to do over the next few days, over the weekend, is maybe as you're going out into the world and either experiencing services, paying for services, or even being an observer of the delivery of services, whether you're in a coffee shop or a restaurant or in a retail store of some kind, notice what is happening in the value exchange and see if you can consider what that's worth to each party. Because some parties will value something more than others, right? And so when you are rewarded well, it's because all the different levels of value are being satisfied and fulfilled at a high level. So these are just some areas to think about. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that to ponder about your own services, where you are experiencing a mutually rewarding exchange, and what makes it rewarding for you, and how you know it's rewarding for your client.